Hey there, you're welcome to the Tech Tuesdays webinar on Certificate Implementation on ICAI. I am Brinda, your host for today's session. Today we have Charana Patra as the presenter for this webinar. She is a software engineer from the Informatica Global Customer Support team with more than 6 years of experience. Before we start this webinar, let's go through some housekeeping tips. This webinar will be for 1 hour. That includes a 45 minutes webcast, and then we'll roll over to live for 15 minutes to answer your queries. You can post your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll try and answer them throughout the presentation, as well as a 15 minutes dedicated just for the Q&As. All dial-in participants will be muted, so Charana can present without any kind of interruptions. This webinar session is being recorded and will be available in the Informatica Support YouTube channel and the Success Portal. The recording link will also be sent to you. Please set aside some time to complete the post-webinar survey and provide your feedback and suggestions for upcoming topics for Tech Tuesdays webinars. The Tech Tuesdays webinars is a webinar series introduced in the Success Portal. The Informatica Success Portal is a micro-learning platform that offers free and unlimited learning to all registered users. The Success Portal lists up your success offerings, your customer success manager information, bookings available in the Ask an Expert session, and customized recommendation and content. Here are a few important links that you can go over later that will help you in your product adoption journey through Informatica. Over to you, Charana. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Let's start with today's topic, which is how to implement certificate in CAI. We will go for the agenda which needs to be covered today. That is use cases. The use cases will be covered when we should deploy the process on agent and what all are the possible ways to do it. Basically, the use case will explain the scenarios. The trust store slide will contain what is a trust store and how to configure it and what is the default configuration of a trust store. Similar way, the key store will slide will explain what is a key store, what is the default configuration of a key store, and how to customize the key store properties. The service properties slide will explain which all are the required properties that needs to be modified during the implementation and to support the secured communication. The brief on SSL handshake and types of SSL communication will cover the types of communication, that is one way and two way, the steps, how it occurs as a part of the slide. The demo on setting up the service properties will cover where to set and how to set the properties, what all are the enablement needs to be done, what are the common issues or challenges that we face. We will see it in the second last of our slide and how to overcome it or the resolution part. The related articles and commands will cover the usages and the utilization for different scenarios of the same. So we will cover the knowledge articles or the KB articles, the key tool command, which is part of the presentation. Let's move to the next slide. This covers when should we deploy a process over the secure agent. There are a couple of properties which needs to be mentioned and changed, updated if a process is published over the agent. As shown over the window, if you are able to see it, there are a couple of details which are available under server configuration, that is properties, monitors, queues, storage, and the system service. As a part of a secure agent process, the properties which can be modified are the process activity execution limit, the web service invoke timeout, web service reply timeout, and the message size, message with attachment size, which are commonly used. Let's take a glance on each properties. The process activity execution limit increases when we use a particular process for a looping or iteration. For multiple records, it gets a number of execution limit, and similarly, it if millions of records are there, then it exceeds the process activity execution limit. In that scenario, the cloud server processes cannot be modified, or the limit of the process activity execution cannot be increased. However, unlike the process deployed on cloud server, we can increase the limit for a secure agent if the process is deployed for a secure agent. Similarly, the process ideal timeout, the process count, all these properties can be edited if a process is published over secure agent. The web service invoke timeout and the reply timeout is helpful if we are calling a particular API in using our service connector, the third-party API, which requires more time than 60 seconds, then we cannot increase it using our cloud server processes. So in that scenario, we will be requiring the web service invoke timeout and web service reply timeout to be modified or to be increased in case of a secure agent process. So as you see, you can increase this time here, and no need to restart the process server. By default, it will take the value once it is changed. And coming to the message size limit, by default, the message size limit is 5 KB. Similarly, message with attachment size is also 5 KB by default. However, it can change as per your requirement. Please make sure that the memory is available on your secure agent machine to afford this particular property. So you can also customize the storage if a process is published over secure agent. You can customize the scheduled maintenance as a part of it. The second last scenario when we publish a process over secure agent is when we want to change the host name. If you want to use the custom domain name or the custom host name for a particular process, then we need to edit it over here. As you see, the default host name is localhost, and that can be edited. If you want to use the host name of the secure agent machine, then there are no other properties needs to be edited, like the key alias, key store, trust store, the passwords, etc. Only you have to edit the local host to the secure agent machine host name and restart the processor. That will help us in getting the custom domain. However, if other than the host name of the secure agent machine, if you want to customize the domain as per your organization, example, the custom domain name with a wildcard entry like star.informatica.com or Informatica Cloud, something like this, then we have to go for the other property change that we will cover in the coming slides. The last part of why we should go for a process published on agent is the secured communication. If you want to use the HTTPS or the secured communication, then we need to publish it on agent to provide the required certificate, the custom certificate that we will cover in today's topic, and the required prerequisites to how to do it. Let's go to the next slide where we will discuss on different ways to invoke process deployed on secure agent. If we use secure agent 30.0 or later, you can use HTTP and HTTPS endpoints to invoke processes deployed to the secure agent. So this section will explain how to construct or access REST and SOAP endpoints to access the processes deployed to the secure agent through HTTP or HTTPS. So when you deploy Informatica Process Designer or IPD processes, the endpoint URL construction for anonymous is different from the endpoint URL construction for non-anonymous access. When we say it's non-anonymous, that means it could be for a particular user or for a user group. Let's check it on the demo. As you see, the process which I have created as a sample, the service URL is the REST URL and the SOAP service URL is the SOAP URL. The construction currently it is as an anonymous access which can be accessed publicly over outside of Informatica as well as inside. So the construction format somehow looks like for an anonymous IPD processes, the HTTPS // the host name, the port number, process engine, public RT, and then the process name. The Swagger will be / the Swagger file. So here the local host, if it is HTTPS, the default port which is used is 7443. If you are going to access the HTTP port, then commonly used port number is 7080. Similarly, let's see how the URL change if I give a particular user. As of now, I have provided a particular user and let's publish it to check on the URL. Meanwhile, we will also cover the HTTP part of non-anonymous. As we already know. So if you see, the public part is not there as a part of the process URL structure. So it will have almost similar structure without the public. You can use this. However, the only difference is the user which is mentioned can only use this or access this to invoke the process. Similarly, if you have multiple users belongs to a particular project or something, you can define a DL or a particular user group, and that can be defined here. Or else you can manage it through mentioning different users allowed under allowed users group. I hope this is clear as of now. And as we know, the Swagger file is utilized in case of REST v2, in case of REST, and the WSDL file will be available for the SOAP. Let's move to the next slide. The next slide we will talk about the prerequisites which needs to be done when we want to expose the HTTPS IPD process on secure agent. Basically, if you want to expose the process URL outside of your secure agent or anywhere in your secure agent machine. So you may need to configure the process server services of an Informatica Cloud Secure Agent when exposing an HTTPS TLS endpoint on the agent. To enable this, the process server service needs to be configured with a key store and a trust store. The trust store is nothing but when we establishing a HTTPS TLS handshake, the trust store is used to verify the credentials. And unlike trust store, the key store is used to provide the credentials which is asked by the trust store. The key store in Java stores private keys and certificates corresponding to their public keys. It is required to expose a trusted endpoint as a part of the HTTPS or TLS handshake, are required to perform client authentication when an endpoint requires it. Let's discuss about what is a trust store and what is a key store in our next slide. Before going for trust store and key store, let's also discuss about the second requirement why we need a process to be published on secure agent machine. So the other scenario is when a HTTPS service that requires certificate authentication or the mutual certificate authentication is called inside a Informatica Cloud Secure Agent transformation, that is service connector. You may need to configure the process server services little different than the previous one. If you are invoking that the service which require X.509 client certificate based mutual authentication. So the node point or the key point here, which is differs from the previous case, is the customization of the key store and how to do or how to import the certificate. So in the previous scenario, we have to customize the key store and the trust store both. However, in this scenario, we have to use the custom key store under additional JVM properties, and the required certificate needs to be added on the concerts folder. We will cover in detail in our coming slides. Properties that needs to be configured in process server. So all the server properties that can be modified if a process is published on agent, like the key store password, trust store password. So let's go for it on a demo. The list of properties which were shown are used to enable the secure agent process. So this is nothing but the key store password, trust store and trust store password. The key store property under server contains the relative path of the key store where it is stored. So the default path when a secure agent is installed, you will get it is the location will be the agent home, then apps, process engine, conf a.keystore. The file will name as a.keystore. Let's check for the path over here. I have installed my secure agent under C drive and the program files. So I could set my path as C program files and then apps process engine. However, the path of the important note over here is the key store. If you are using under system configuration details, then the path needs to be mentioned always as a relative path. As you see over the screen, the path is mentioned as the relative path. Similar way, the trust store path will also be a relative path of it. Then let's talk about the key store password. The key store password by default is password. You can also change the password if you want to generate a new key store file, which will be covered in the next slides. Similarly, the trust store password can be changed if you want to use a trust store, new trust store. Let's talk about how a trust store is generated and where the base of the certificate stays. So the trust store also stays in the same path like the key store, that is process engine, conf, and then the file. As you see, you can see the a.cassettes file, which is our trust store, the default trust store, and a.keystore file, which is our default keystore file. So if you are going to invoke an endpoint of a service that requires certificate-based mutual authentication, then you will need to import a public certificate. So there are two ways. Either you can import it using a import command or else place the certificate under conf search folder, which is here, and then restart the secure agent or the process service to get imported. By default, it will import the public certificate into a.cassettes file. As you see, the default certificate is localhost, which is available under this folder. The default password for a trust store is change it. You can change the password as well if you going for a generating a new trust store file. Below is the command, the key tool command on how to generate the password of a particular trust using for a particular trust store or for a key store. Let's move to our next slide. This is basically how to configure a trust store and what is the default trust store configuration and the custom configuration. Before going there, let's talk about what is a trust store and how it is different from the key store. The trust store is used for the storage of certificates from the Trusted Certificate Authority, that is called as CA, which is used in the verification of the certificate provided by the server in an SSL connection. On the other hand, a key store is used to store the private key and own identity certificates to be identified for verification. So as we were discussing in the previous slide, the trust store will verify the credentials and the credentials will be provided by the key store. In an SSL handshake, the work of trust store is to verify the credential, whereas the work of key store is to provide those credentials. Those are the most important difference between trust store and key store. I hope it's clear. Key store contains one private key for the host, while trust store contains no private key. So basically, the private key which will be required during SSL communication will be stored in the key store. So that's why the key store format and all is very important, which we will discuss later. So let's talk about the default trust store configuration. As we were seeing in our previous demo, the process server services creates a default trust store file when it is deployed to a secure agent. The trust store file is located at the process engine conf folder. As we are discussing, to add a new certificate to your configuration, you can either use the import command or need to copy the certificates to the particular folder. Restart the process server and the certificates will be imported as a part of the a.cassettes file. Let's talk about a few important points. That is, if you import a public certificate directly to the default trust store, you should also copy the certificate file into the particular folder. The step is required. As default, the trust store file is overwritten on the secure agent restart. The default trustor is created from the cassettes file, which is located in the agent home JRE lib security directory. Let's have a glance on it. As you see, my default directory is a C drive, and it is available under the agent home. That is, for me, the agent home is this, and then the JRE lib and security folder. So as you see, the cassettes file is here, and basically it is used as a base because Java predefines a set of public certificates that it holds in this particular location. It is used as a base trustor. That's why do not update the cassette file which is present under JRE lib. The trustor, that is because it will overwritten during the secure agent upgrades. So if you add any of the file here, then it might not be reflected, the certificate file, it might not be reflected after the agent secure agent restart. Coming to the custom trustor configuration, you can create a custom trustor file and provide the path to this file using the trustor property. So as we were seeing, the trustor properties are belongs to two things. One is the trustor path, and the other is the trustor password. As we see, the default password is changed. So if you want to use the custom trustor, then this file will not be overwritten on agent restart. So you need to import all the public certificates that you need to add into the trustor file. In the previous versions of the agent, if you had not configured a trustor and process server invoked an endpoint using HTTPS or TLS, it would have used the default set of public certificates found in the JRE lib security cassettes file that we were discussing just before this discussion. So if you are going to use import command, then please make sure that the certificate which you are importing is also available under conf certs folder where we find the default localhost certificate. Let's talk about what is a key store. As we know, the key store helps us providing the credentials and it stores a private key. The process server services creates a default key store file when it is deployed to a secure agent. This key store file is located in agent home apps process engine conf a.keystore, like the default key store file name is a.keystore. This key store file is intended to be used to store private keys, as we were discussing. You need to import additional private keys that you intend to use in addition to the default the default private key, that is the localhost key, into the key store file. By default, the certificate with the localhost alias is installed into the default key store. So coming to the customization of the key store configuration, if you intend to expose an agent-based endpoint and intend to connect to this endpoint using HTTPS TLS, you will need to generate a custom key store, or you have to import the private key to the key store Informatica, that is Informatica provided. In order to import the secret private key within the Informatica key store, the secret key must have the same key store format, that is pkcs12r.p12, which is very important. If the particular key is not in a format, you can convert it to a particular required format using keytool command. Please have a note that the default key store is not overwritten on upgrades. So unlike the trust store, to use a custom key store, you need to configure the key store properties using the agent runtime environment properties of the process server. That is nothing but the key store path and the key store password. The command, the key tool command, which is listing a key store, will be very helpful in understanding the details or the key details. So let's move to our next slide where we will understand what is a SSL handshake and the types of communication. The main purpose of an SSL handshake is to provide privacy and data integrity for communication between a server and a client. During the handshake, the server and client will exchange important information required to establish secure communication. So there are two types of SSL handshakes described as one-way SSL and two-way SSL. The two-way SSL is also called as mutual SSL. The difference between those two is that in one-way SSL, only the client validates the identity of the server, whereas in two-way SSL, both server and client validate the identity of each other. So our first slide will explain on the one-way SSL. What happens as a first step is the client hello. The client will send the information that will be required by the server to start an HTTPS connection. The second step will be a GC. It is a server hello. The server hello is sent when the server will respond back with the configuration that it is selected from the client hello along with its information to proceed with the handshake. In the first part, like the client hello, there we will be sending the TLS information and the cipher suit information that is supported by the client. The server key exchange message will occur as a third thing or the certificate thing. So this message will be sent by the server to the client carrying the required details or the client to generate the pre-master secret. Let's move to the next slide for understanding the other processes. The certificate request. As we see, the client certificate request will be sent after the third step. The client certificate request is nothing but this is the place where the one-way SSL differs from the two-way SSL. So basically in one-way SSL, the authenticity of the client is not being validated because it's just validates the server details and accepts it, trusting it. Hence, this step is omitted in one-way SSL. Next will be the client certificate. The client presents its certificates chain to the server. The certificate needs to be appropriated for the negotiated cipher suits, key, exchange algorithm, and any negotiated extensions that is sent as a first part. Then the sixth thing which comes over here is the client key exchange message. So this message needs to be sent by the client following the client certificate message. If the client certificate is not being presented, that is in one way, the client key exchange message should be sent after the client receives the server hello done message. As a last step of the authentication, after successful authentication and generating the pre-master secrets or the master secret, a change of cipher spec messages will be sent by both client and the server, indicating that the rest of the communication will be encrypted. With this, the one-way and two-way SSL will be done. Let's talk about where and how it will be implemented in case of our scenario when we are exposing an HTTPS IPD process and when you are invoking a HTTPS mutual authentication API. In case of a mutual based authentication API which is accessed through a service connector, if it is using, the server is expecting a key exchange information from our side, then we need to use the customization of the key store as well as the certificate so that the two-way SSL can occur. And in terms of the first scenario, that is when we are exposing an HTTPS endpoint, the IPD process endpoint outside of Informatica Secure Agent is commonly used scenario is the one-way SSL. We do not validate the client details which is accessing it. However, you can also make it as two-way SSL using few of the custom properties. Now let's talk about how to configure the process server service properties to expose HTTPS IP processes on secure agent. Basically, it covers almost 6 properties which needs to be edited. You can find it, as we are saying, it is provided under the ICS console, the administrator console, then go to configure and runtime environment. Select the particular agent where you want to change the properties or implement the details. Then select edit and update the process server service properties. So let's cover one by one. The type should be server and the name will be hostname. The default value will be localhost. However, you can use the custom design, like as we were discussing, the custom name can be the secure agent hostname or the common name as per the certificate. The common name could be used as a wildcard entries like star.informatica.com. Let's talk about what is a common name in brief. In the case of a single name certificate, the common name consists of a single host name or a wildcat name in case of a wildcard certificate. So coming to the key alias, if you generate a key store, the private key also contains a key alias or the name. The default certificate which is available with the key alias is localhost. However, you can change it as per the key store, the customized key store. So coming to the key store properties, as we know, the default path of it is relative path, and it is a.keystore. When you are going to use a customized one, you can use the particular name of the customized key store. You can also mention the default. You can also use the default directory to store the customized key store. However, you can also place the key store in any other path of the secure agent machine. However, mention it correctly while editing the sessions. Coming to the key store password, the key store password default is a password. Once you generate the new password, like generating the customizing the key store, the key store password needs to be mentioned over this property. Please make sure that the key store password and key password which needs to be same. Coming to the trust store, as we know, the default trust store path is a.ksets. The trust store password is change it. So let's have a demo on, have a look on all the properties. So as you see, this is our default host name. This is the key alias as we were discussing. This is the key store password, the trust store, and the trust store password. Let's go for the next slide. So unlike the previous scenario where we are exposing the HTTPS API outside of Informatica, here we are invoking the service that requires the certificate authentication. So here we require only 2 properties which needs to be changed, and doing the details, we have to go to the ICS console, configure and runtime environment, select the agent and edit it like previous time. So here the JVM additional properties that needs to be changed, as like mentioned, these are the parameters which holds the value of the SSL key store and the key store password. The public certificate, as I was saying, you can import it or place it under concert folder. Set the following properties under JVM additional properties and restart the secure agent. We will have a demo on this. In this scenario, as I was explaining, I am setting it to a particular folder where I have kept it. Let's see it. So I have kept it under the ICS lab files as a sample, and the password of it is a sample, so I have kept it accordingly. So as a part of this slide, as I was explaining, I have imported my certificate also to the conf folder, and I have kept and copied the file, the certificate file. In my case, the certificate file name is getcerts. So I have copied it here under conf certs folder. I have placed my debug key store, which is the sample key store here, under CICS files as I was showing, and the password, the custom password is sample. So once I save it, I have to restart the process service. So let's have a check on that. Once you save it, let us accept, and a new version of process server will be applicable. As you see, the new version is already in the restart required mode. So you can go over here. You can stop the process server and then restart the process server once it is available. Once the new process server version is up and running, then you can test the results as a part of it, and you should not get any SSL handshake error or the PKX error. Let's go for the next slide. Before we go to the next slide, let's have a look on the previous scenario where we need to change the local host to the custom domain, and the certificate, the key store path, and the customized trust store or the key store. Let's have a look on it. As I was showing over the previous slides, the host name, I have changed it to my customized one. The key alias, I have kept it, and I have placed my key store under the default path. As you know, if you want, you can place it anywhere in the folder, in a different folder. And that folder, you have to mention it here like we did for the JVM additional properties. Similarly, the key store password, I have mentioned it, and I have imported my certificate here. Let's have a check on the from where you will get all these details. As you were seeing over my screen, I have listed my key store to get all the details. So the alias name of the key is here. So I have placed it accordingly. As you are seeing over the screen, the key alias name is here. And the certificate CA name or the common name is my host name. So the host name is also there. The host name can be also given as a extra property, so during creation of it. So make sure that you are providing the correct host name. After that, the password of it is very important. As I was saying, the key and the key store, the both passwords should be same. So you can have a look on it using the key store explorer. I have already opened it. You can have a look. You can open the file over here and then open the key to know the password. You can test the password is correct or not if you are able to open it. Once the password is given, no need to provide it once more time. So similarly, the trustor, once it is, as I was telling, the certificate needs to be placed under that folder, conf folder, and no other properties are required to change it. So I have already changed these properties, and my process server is in a starting up mode as I have did it, since the older version will be stopped and the newer version will be up and running after some time. You can check your status under audit log. So by the time it's starting up, let's go to our next slide and have a discussion. So our next slide explains that what are the config problems that we face during implementation of the certificate if the Informatica Cloud Secure Agent is behaving like a client. That is when you are invoking a third-party API or the web service which has mutual authentication. So the possible scenarios are if the certificate is missing from the cassette, or you have imported the certificate but you haven't copied it in the conf folder. In the similar way, if the private key is missing from the key store, that will also create a problem. Sometimes the key store is invalid since the key is missing, and the certificate or the trust store itself is converted into a key store without a private key, and that itself has created the problem. So let's have a look on the scenario where it can happen. This can be tested using the key tool -v list command. When you use -v, it gives us in detail. So as you see here, we have an entry like your key store contains one entry, and it should be of private key type. So if this is the scenario, then only you will get to know that, and the entry type is private key entry. So if both the scenario you have in your key store, then only you will be sure that the private key is also included in your key store. Sometimes the .jks file of a certificate is provided by the vendor, but it doesn't contain the private key. So in that scenario, the this becomes invalid, and it creates a problem. So let's go to our next statement. That is the expired or revoked certificates. So if the certificate provided is expired or the access has been revoked, then also it will create a problem. So let's have a look how to check on if the certificate is expired or not. So as you are able to see over my screen, the certificate expiry, you can check it using the Key Store Explorer. This can also be checked by using the key tool command. So as of now, I have just made it easy. So you can use the Key Store Explorer for this. You can also see the other details such as the subject, valid from, valid until, what is the public key algorithm, and all those things to verify. So coming back to the point, invalid key store format, that can also be caused if the extension which is like the .js key store, if that is not given correctly. Let's say I have a file, key store file, which extension is .js. However, if I mention it incorrectly or the path mentioned is incorrect, then also you will get a problem. So we will cover it in detail, how to check and what are the places to verify if it is correct or not. So let's go to our next slide, which is when Informatica is behaving like a server. That is when we are exposing the Informatica Cloud process URL, the service URL, to outside of Informatica Secure Agent. So the possible scenarios where it can go wrong is during configuration of the hostname. If the hostname is not correct, or we mention an incorrect hostname, then it can create a problem. So make sure that the hostname which is provided by the vendor is the common name or the CN of the key store. And if you want, you can also use the localhost as the hostname. However, the localhost, as we know, it will be converted to the machine IP address of the machine hostname. So this is what the important point where if we are going to use the custom domain or hostname. As we know, the incorrect certificate chain could also be creating a problem during the configuration. So the correct certificate chain can be downloaded through a browser. Just browse that URL using in any of the browser and download the particular certificate chain. Similarly to the client, expiry or the revocation of the access of the certificate could also create a problem or the issue, and the invalid key store format and the invalid key alias adding to the first slide. So as we know, the invalid key alias can be checked under our by comparing the server properties and the key tool command. So the key alias can be verified. Let's have a look on the next slide of how and where to get the details of these problems. So as we know how we can, we are going to get this problem, how to identify it. So the incorrect custom key store is the invalid key store. We can consider it here. The incorrect custom key store error looks like something this. The system cannot find the file specified. This error can occur either if the extension of the key store is incorrect, or the path given is not a valid path. If you are not using the default path, make sure that the path mentioned is in a correct way, or the folder name is already existing. So adding another point to the incorrect custom key store, make sure that your key store contains a private key entry. In case of incorrect password, if the password of the key store is incorrect, or if the key at the key store password doesn't match, then you will get this kind of error in the Catalina log. I have tested a couple of scenarios like this, and tried to collect all the possible errors. So as you see, the incorrect password error looks like something this. Then we go to the incorrect key alias. So the incorrect key alias is nothing but if the alias name is incorrect, or it is mentioned incorrectly, or given by incorrectly by the vendor. Adding to all these errors, I would like to show where you will get the Catalina log and a different error which is not included in the slide, but it is I have tested for this. This is my Catalina log. For your information, the Catalina log will be stored under the process engine and then the logs. Let me show you the folder. As you see, I have installed it in my program file, so it will come under secure agent, apps, and process engine, then logs. So consider the date of log which you want to use or verify. Based on that, you can have a check on it. So here I have tried to test it in a couple of scenarios. I would like to show you where you can validate whether it is going for the correct trust store or not. Once you restart your secure agent, all the properties will be shown like this: the key store, the port, and the initialization. Once that is there, you can have a check on whether the certificate, whether you have provided, is coming correctly or not over here. If you have a proxy, then make sure the proxy does not have any restriction, or if you have a firewall, make sure that it is accessible or whitelisted. The required IPs are whitelisted when you are exposing the process URL outside of your secure agent machine, or accessing, invoking any of the services inside the secure agent machine. So these all are the important factors when you are dealing with the certificate implementation in a cloud application integration. I hope till now it's clear. Then we will just go for the next slide. The next slide talks about the exception which are there in cloud application integration. So there is a JVM additional properties, that is the Java XNet debug, which enabling which we will be able to collect the debug logs if we have any SSL problem during the handshake. So no matter whether it is one way or two way, we can get the logs to verify or investigate on it. However, unlike DI, cloud application integration does not support the logging levels by the JVM option. So this is an exception to CAI. However, we will talk about the workarounds on how to collect the logs. Coming to the second point, certificate-based authentication that can only be configured to one API. That means more than one APIs, which has certificate-based mutual authentication that cannot be called using service connector. Describing more on this because the Java additional properties which we were verifying as a part of the couple of times before, that is if you want to use more than one custom key store, that is not supported in cloud application integration. At a time, only one certificate is supported. Either it will take the local host or the other customized key store. So this is one of the limitation for this as a workaround. Either you can use the REST v2 connection in data integration and import the required certificate and the key store. Unlike a CAI, data integration does not have any restriction on adding the number of certificates or the key stores. We will just have a look on the guide on the REST v2. The REST v2 can be used as a source, target, and a mid transformation. Just in a brief, as I was describing, the REST v2 connector supports all the REST methods, that is get, put, post, and it can also be used for all the types of authentication, that is basic, digest, and OAuth 1.0 and 2.0 authorization. So it can also be supported for multiple types of following types of data, and you can also use the parsing, how to parse the response and all the parsing response headers as a feature of it. You can create a Swagger file to use the REST v2 connector. If you want more details, it will be given in the slide later, all the knowledge articles on how to do it and how to use this. You can use it as a source, midstream, and target. You can have a look on this particular feature if you want to go for multiple multiple APIs which supports mutual authentication. If you want to go for cloud application integration, then either you can go for another secure agent installation, or you can add HA proxy so that you can bypass the certificate authentication. So these are the common scenarios if you want to go for the more than one API. So we had left the process server in the first step, that is when we want to expose the HTTPS endpoint outside of our Informatica secure agent. So my secure agent is now up and running, the process service. So once the process service is up and running, you can see that the URL has been changed as per the required host name, and this can also be accessed out in the browser if you want to call it. So there are a couple of restrictions on when we want to use the CA sign and when we want to use the self-signed certificate. In my scenario, it's a self-signed certificate. So I'll explain you the required steps. In case of self-signed certificate, the SSL certificate verification needs to be off if you are going to use the Postman. And as I'll show you the demo, what will be the problem in case of if we are going to access it. You will still get a error like this that it is not able to communicate to the host. So for that, you can do one thing. You can make the SSL certification verification as off and then try to execute the particular URL. Please also be noted that this, if you are going for a self-signed certificate, then the certificate chain needs to be imported in the browser, and then you can try to access the URL. However, if you are going for a public or the CA signed certificate, these all steps are not required as a part of extra verification things. So once the certificate, if the certificate is CA signed, then you can directly share the HTTPS link with the client or the vendor to whom you want to expose it, and they will be able to execute the particular process. So these all are the quite few things which we will cover. We will be covering as a part of implementation. The second slide contains the related articles. That is the knowledge articles which are helpful while during we were implementing the certificates. So if the certificate is missing from the cassettes file or the keys from the key store, we can use the knowledge article mentioned below to get the key and import it. So coming to the part of like testing it, this article can be used to test the JMS connectivity outside of Informatica Cloud Application Integration. This is a very important part and it is very commonly used. To implement this knowledge article, you can download the sample jar file which is given here, and then include the details like these all are the properties which needs to be provided to verify if the connection is working fine or not. So to execute this, you can provide this command, and it should be able to show you the details like if it is able to communicate correctly or not. So in addition with this article, we have how to import public certificates into the integration part. So this contains that if it is a public certificate, in the mutual authentication, and you do not have a key store, then no need to add the JVM additional properties. Simply importing the certificate and copying the certificate into the conf folder will resolve the issue. The custom certificate on secure agent is also an additional point over here. The SSL handshake topic or the article will explain. This will explain how many types of communications are there. That is, as we were discussing, one way and two way, and what all are the steps are there, including the client hello and all. So this all are the related articles. Let's go for the related commands. As we know, the key tool commands are commonly used to either import a certificate, or if you want to convert a certificate to a key store, or listing the key store file to have a in detail information. So you can also use the generate key command, that is to generate a self-signed certificate in case of if you want to go for a testing. So if it is a self-signed certificate, the validity of the certificate will not be more like CSIN certificate. So please make sure that once the certificate is expired, no matter whether it is public or CSIN or the self-signed. So once it is expired, you need to perform the similar kind of steps to generate a new key store with the new validity or the extended validity. The common key tool commands are listed in this article below. The key tool explorer list is there where you can download the key store explorer tool for your convenience. I hope I have covered all the related topics over here. If you want any further information, you can write down in our chat below and we would try to cover it up in our next topics. If you want any further topics to be covered as a part of Tech Tuesday, please let us know and we will arrange the sessions. We also have a Ask an Expert session which you can book using the network portal. If you have any further queries or concern, or if you want to get any additional details for a particular topic, and there we can arrange a demo on a specific topic and try to implement it. So I hope this session is helpful. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.